I want you to think back to when you were a child. Now, nobody has to teach a child how to lie to their parents. Okay, that's just a skill that we all develop naturally. And we hone that craft as time goes on, in particular, to get ourselves out of trouble. That's where we really learn the skill of what is it that we need to say that is believable enough for mom and dad to bite. And so we hone that skill, and then we're able to use it in other places throughout our life. But go back to your life, and just for a minute, can you think of the best lie that you pulled off with your mom and dad? You probably can. And you probably go back now and you say, man, that was just stupid. Me doing that just wasn't very bright. And you look back and you see the immaturity in it. You see it for what it's worth, because as a child, lying is lying. Lying is sin. I'm not in any way saying that it's okay to do that. But I'm saying, a child's level of lying is not yet to the complexity that it will become when you become an adult. One of the cruelest lies that I am personally aware of, I found out about later on in life. And this was a girl that I went to high school with. Now, I didn't go to elementary school with her. We were in different places. But when we got to middle school, we were at the same school. I transferred from a public elementary school to a private Christian middle school that was extraordinarily wealthy. Nothing wrong with it. It just was a radically different environment than what I had been in my first years in my grammar school. And so there was this girl that she and I, it's one of those unique relationships, great friends. Never once did we ever consider dating. It just was not on the table on either end. We respected one another. We thought the world of one another, but there was never a moment where we thought about a romantic interest in there. And so, I would certainly get counsel from her about life, about women in particular. 2 brothers, 9 guy cousins. In many ways, I'm still rather stupid as it relates to understanding the female species. So I would get counsel from her about, various things in life with girls. And I remember this so distinctly. We were juniors in high school. She was a cheerleader. I was a football player. We were one particular weekend on the game. It was a Saturday night. We were hanging out, several of us in a group together. And I remember there was this moment where one of the girls, because girls do this with one another, you can get away with this, play with each other's hair. And so if guys play with each other's hair, that's just weird. Okay, so the girl, she pulled my friend's hair back, and then she immediately went forward like this and covered up her ears. It was just a little odd. I didn't know if she was joking. I didn't know if it was, if she got shocked. I don't know what it was, but she got real quiet real quick. And this is not a quiet girl. This is a girl with a pretty gregarious personality. And so she got real quiet. And I just, for some reason, just noted that in my mind. And then later on in the night, came back to it and I said, hey, just want to ask you about that. That was a little odd. Is everything okay? And immediately, tears swell up in her eyes. Now again, I don't know jack about girls. I'm not even walking with the Lord at this point in my life, so I don't even know about how to counsel people and to comfort folks. And she just swells up in tears, and then she starts to go into her story. And she stopped. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to press in a little bit more. I didn't know how to make it such that I was a safe place for her to talk. I literally did not know what to do, and so we left it. She went off to a different college. I stayed at home, went to the local school, tried to play basketball. It didn't work out. I was just not good enough. Later on, though, one of our class reunions, we would meet back up, and she is married at this point. And she married a guy that was a little bit older in life. For us, we thought 10-year gap was, wow, that's a lot older. That she's married a guy that's like 30. Woo. And so the gap was there. She got married a little bit younger than the norm would be for our culture. And I just this classroom, I just remember talking with her, and I said, "Hey, years ago, do you remember this?" And once again, tears start swelling up. Now, at this point, I know a little bit more. At this point, I am walking with the Lord and talking to her, and then so she then goes into her story, and I never knew this. again, we were great friends. I never, ever knew her story. When she was 3 years old, she was kidnapped. She was removed from her home. She was kidnapped not by some stranger. She was actually kidnapped by a distant family member. And their reasons were their own. And so she was brought to this particular area and where we grew up. That's when, of course, later on middle school is when I met her. But she shared that her father, the man that was raising her at this point, shared with her about why she was in this particular scenario. And he shared with her, your dad really didn't want you around. And he painted her dad out to be this mongrel. To this day, I've never met her biological father. Don't know him, never met him, have no idea what he's really like from personal experience. He was telling her that he was a monster, that he didn't love her, etc. But one of the things that the man who raised her said to her over and over again was, he said, you have Dumbo ears. And no man is ever going to love you with those ears. In fact, it was one of the things that your dad talked about. He talked about not wanting you around because he couldn't stand the sight of your ears. There were several other things that she shared, several things that I would not mention in public that happened to her as she was growing up that she thought was normal, was very much not normal. And she paid a dear price for that year after year after year. She believed something about this man. Now, I saw her at our 20-year high school reunion, caught up with her. She has since been reconciled to her biological father. That's a whole different dynamic. He is evidently a wonderful, wonderful man. Did not know of her whereabouts for many, many years until she was actually in high school and chose not to try to re-engage in a relationship with her, thinking that it might cause more damage. But they did reunite later on, and things are different now. She believed a lie about her biological father, though. And she paid a price for what the man who raised her was feeding her all of her life. You know where I'm going with this. Are you listening to the evil one talk to you about your father? Are you listening to him share some things about who your heavenly Father is and why it is he doesn't want to be around you, and pointing out all of your flaws and the things that you do wrong and when you do it and why you're worthless? Are you listening to him? And now this is what's so crucial. When those lies come, and they come for all of us, no one is exempt from this. He speaks in a manner that he knows our language. In other words, what gets to me may not get to you, and what gets to you may not get to me. He knows how to speak things to us that our ears perk up and we say, oh, I know. It's true about me. And we get half of the gospel. We know that we're rotten to the core. We don't get the other half, in that we are precious and beloved and cherished in his sight, that he actually thought we were worth dying for. We miss that part because we're so busy listening to this voice that is constantly barking. I don't know where you are in your journey, but there's a very real thing called spiritual warfare. I don't want to freak anybody out about this. That's not the goal. The goal is not to come in here and talk about Rosemary's Baby and heads turning around and demons in every corner. What I do want to say is this, in a very real sense, all of the battles that are mentioned in the Old Testament are designed to point us to the bigger battle. So I want you to wrap your minds around this thought. All throughout the history of God's people, God has been a warrior king. He has gone to fight. You remember some of the battles? He leads the people from Israel out. They come upon this body of water. They got trained assassins behind them. And what does God say to them to do? Just stand and watch the Lord deliver. Remember that time in which it was Joshua who was later, the guy leading from Moses, and they walk up and they come to this city, and the city's got a big wall, and God says, here's what I want you to do. March around it several times, and then I want you to blow trumpets and scream. And walls fell down. Was it because of a battle? Oh, it was a battle. But it was the battle that God was engaging in. All throughout, and these are just a couple of extreme examples, all throughout, God was going to war. The people had to fight. They had to be engaged. They had to do things. But it was God who was giving them the power, giving them the strength. It was the warrior king who was actually doing the battling himself. If you remember, I just thought about this. Do you remember, oh man, I'm going to botch it. It was one of the three movies of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I can't remember. It's Return of the King, in which he goes and he has all those souls that are there, and then they come in, and so they were all engaged in battle, and yet when these restless souls come in, they just take over, and the battle is won. The people were fighting, but it was the restless souls who did that. I'm even thinking this through, going, God, that's a really bad analogy. God's not a restless soul, but I think you get the point. And it's the danger of giving illustrations on the spot. Don't do that for the future. God's doing the work. You got to fight. So let me ask you this. What does it look like to fight? What does it look like to fight when you're in the middle of the battle, when the evil one is speaking to you? A, about who you are and who you are not. And B, about who your Father is and who he is not. How do you battle? I want to real quickly go through a chapter you may or may not be familiar with. It comes from the book of Daniel, which is a very interesting book. The first 6 chapters of Daniel are very, very simple and very easy to read. Children know these stories. Daniel in the lion's den, for example. Folks that were thrown into a fire there, and there's a fourth man in that fire. These stories children know and understand with pristine clarity. Once you get to chapter 7, though, throughout the rest of the book, seasoned theologians, way past what I'm capable of doing, are in confusion as to what some of this means. Now, it doesn't mean that the book is not understandable. It just means that there are some things in here from chapter 7 on that are very, very mysterious to us. Chapter 10, because you're mathematicians, you know, falls in the second part of that. It's in between 7 and 12 there. So chapter 10 is a bit mysterious to us. Daniel serves a long time. The book of Daniel is written over a pretty long period of time. It's here. In fact, in chapter 1, verse 1, it talks about Jehoiakim being the king, who was the king of the southern kingdom. This is before the southern kingdom was overthrown. So that's back in 605 BC, I think is the year that we're referring to then. If you remember, King Saul's the first king, King David is the second king, Solomon is the third king of a united kingdom. After Solomon, the kingdom divides into a northern and southern part. The northern part is overtaken by the Assyrians in 722 BC. The southern kingdom hangs on a little bit longer until 587 BC, in which the Babylonians come in. Nebuchadnezzar comes in and takes over. Now, the Assyrians had done some serious damage, though, here before. And so they were a hated group of people. Daniel is on the scene in which the people were exiled, which means the people who were the rightful owners of that land in Judah, where Jerusalem was, they were the ones that were kicked out and they were spread out. Now, when the Persians came to rule, which is around 539-ish, probably somewhere in there. I probably should have learned that again before getting in front of you here. 539, that we'll call it then, is when they are coming into power, and then they decide there's a different way to go about this. They want to bring the people back to their own land and for them to be able to congregate and practice their own religions again. So Daniel is writing, the book is written with this whole time frame in mind here, and when he gets down here to chapter 10, he talks about the 3rd year of Cyrus, the king of Persia. So now we're talking about 536, 37, somewhere in that neighborhood of the time. It says that a word was revealed to Daniel. And then it gives the name that he had, and it was his other name. And the word was true, and it was a great conflict. And he understood the word and had understanding of the vision. So he gives us kind of the overall picture here. Now, the vision that we're going to get covers chapters 10, 11, and 12. 10 is just the intro to the vision. 11 is the vision itself. And chapter 12 is the instructions from God in regards to what all this means. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning for 3 weeks. I ate no delicacies, no meat or wine entered my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all for the full 3 weeks. The word comes to him, and then what we are told here is that he goes into a fast. Now, it doesn't say it specifically right here, but it's certainly alluded to. And then a little bit later on in this chapter, you'll see it clears it up. Daniel goes and he prays. That's what he's doing right now. And he prays through a means that is called fasting. It's a partial fast, meaning he didn't give up all food and water. He gave up certain things in there. He is fasting. He is giving up a physical need in order to meet a spiritual one. He is throwing himself at God's feet saying, God, please help. Give me understanding. And so when his stomach would hunger, it would be a reminder to him, I've got to go to the Lord. Because what I need right now is not just physical nourishment. I can put this on hold for a little while. I can't put on hold the spiritual nourishment that I need. It says that he didn't even go about some of the normal, natural, cleansing things that he should be doing. We're in the summer time right here. He's hot. He's sweating. He doesn't even put oils or anoint himself. He just reeks. He reeks like a man who is spending time with the Lord. On the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the great river, that is the Tigris, I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a man clothed in linen with a belt of fine gold from somewhere around his waist. His body was like beryl, his face the appearance of lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and the sound of his words like the sound of a multitude. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision. For the men who were with me did not see the vision, but a great trembling fell upon them, and they fled to hide themselves. He lifts up his eyes, and he beholds somebody that is very unlike him. In some ways is like him, but is very different, is set apart. Now, I won't go into the details of this, but know that the description that's given here is very similar to a description that's given in Ezekiel. This is not just a person. This is something or somebody special and unique. He alone catches the vision. The other men that were with him did not see the vision, but yet they were filled with fear. Does that sound weird to you? Meaning that they didn't see what was going on. They didn't hear what was going on, but they knew in the depths of their soul that something was going on. And they're gripped with fear, and they run. You ever been there? You ever been into a place where you know something is going on? Several years ago down in Little 5 Points, I went to go pick up Judith. This was before we were married, and I think it may even been before we were engaged. But she was hanging out with some friends in Little 5 Points. I walk into this building, and I'm not exaggerating. The moment I stepped inside of that door, I just knew. Something inside of me just began to cringe. And as I made my way further and further and further into that location, I can't remember the name of the place, some sort of restaurant/bar, and she was there. They were doing nothing wrong. They were doing nothing sinful. They were just eating a burger and hanging out with friends. But as I walked, I got closer to the table, and I could almost not speak. It was just a sick feeling I had in my gut. And I just knew this was something that was spiritual in nature, and I was really legitimately afraid. As I began I told her, I said, hey, just want to let you know I'm here. Stay as long as you want. I'm going to be waiting outside. And as I began to make my way out, there was a man in the corner who was staring at me the entire way, and he was just pointing. And he just followed me all the way out. And he raised his hands and he began to say something, and I don't know what language it was. You ever been where you just know? You know. So I was left alone and saw this great vision, and no strength was left in me, meaning his body fell to the ground. He is laying prostrate. My radiant appearance was fearfully changed, and I retained no strength. Then I heard the sound of his words. And as I heard the sound of his words, I fell on my face in a deep sleep with my face to the ground. And behold, a hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. So he goes from being flat on his face, almost unconscious, to then whoever this person is comes and touches him. And that touch gives him enough strength where he can get up on all fours. And he said to me, "Oh, Daniel, man, greatly loved. Understand the words that I speak to you and stand upright, for now I have been sent to you." And when he had spoken this word to me, I stood up trembling. He now has enough strength to be able to get on his feet. The words of affirmation that were sent to him from a divine being gave him enough strength to now stand. And then he said to me, "Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before your God, your words have been heard, and I have come because of your words." Daniel had gotten this vision. He knew what was going on. He hits the ground in order to pray, to ask God to do something. And then it says here, this messenger of God says, "I have come because of your words." See, when you have things that are spoken to you, when you have words from the evil one that will tell you you're not really loved, you're not really forgiven, just look at your sin, and it won't be hard to point out your sin, will it? It's not very difficult for him to point out my sin. When he says, your father doesn't really love you. He's not really going to be here for you. He has forgiven you so many times. Do you really think he's going to do it again? His mercy has an end, by the way. When you hear these things, pray. But now, please listen to this. The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I was there with the kings of Persia and came to make you understand what is to happen to your people in the latter days, for the vision is for the days yet to come. And this is where it gets very mysterious for us. There is a messenger from God that is sent by God to Daniel to come and to minister to Daniel. So Daniel hears something and he hits his knees and he begins to pray. And 3 weeks go by before he gets an answer from God. And during this time, the messenger comes and makes the attempt to come and to minister to the soul of Daniel. And yet it says that the prince of Persia held him captive. There's no question, we all are in agreement on this, the theologians will say this is the curtain being pulled back and we're getting a little view now into spiritual warfare. This is happening in the spiritual realm. These are demonic angels that are battling against the good angels. And a messenger sent from God, somehow or another, was held captive by demonic force. Now, all of this is underneath the umbrella of God's sovereignty, meaning this: God could have at any point just said, "Move." And the demon would have fled, if that's a word. Flew. He would have had fled, thank you. Flood, I don't know. God could have ended this right there on the spot, but he chose not to. Do you feel like you're waiting? Do you feel like that you have poured your soul out to the Father? Do you feel like he has not come yet with a message to minister to your very soul? What do you do? How do you battle that? How do you believe when you are begging and God is not showing up? When he had spoken to me according to these words, I turned my face toward the ground and was mute. And behold, one in the likeness of the children of man touched my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spoke. And I said to him who stood before me, O my Lord, by reason of the vision pains have come upon me, and I retain no strength. How can my Lord's servant talk with my Lord? For now no strength remains in me, and no breath is left in me. It's reminiscence for me of David in the Psalm 50, 51, somewhere in that neighborhood, and he says, open my mouth that I may speak. I think there are times in which the evil one has his way with us at certain points in our lives, and it is as if we cannot speak before God. We don't have the words. We don't have the strength. We have begged, and we have run out of our strength. And because he tarries, we don't know what to do. And here he sees. And it's the Lord that comes and touches his lips. He enables him to actually come before God once again and pray. Again, one having the appearance of a man touched me and strengthened me. It's the third time that this angel has touched him. And he said, O man, greatly loved, fear not. Peace be with you. Be strong and of good courage. And he spoke to me. I was strengthened and said, let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me. And then he said, do you know why I've come to you? But now I will return to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come. But I will tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth. There is none who contends by my side except these Michael, your prince. It ends actually with just verse 1 of chapter 11. Bad job making a chapter right here. And as for me, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him. He comes to him and he reminds him, you who are greatly loved. He speaks the truth to him again. And he says, I'm going to go and I'm going to fight once again on your behalf. And somebody else is coming in. But I'm telling you, we are going to win the war. We're on the right side. This is what the messenger is telling him. Our side wins. But the battle is going to get intense. So Daniel, don't get lulled into thinking that you can be in just this peacetime, because there's a war that's taking place that goes beyond sight. It goes beyond sound. And it's a battle that I will win on your behalf. It is the battle. That battle is still taking place. And praise God, once Jesus came finally to the earth, he did his battle, and his battle was not won through the taking of life. The battle was won by the giving of his life. And that settled it once for all. How do you believe when you have begged and have not heard? That's where I want to close. Just a couple of things here to remind us of. How do you know what the truth is unless you are exposing yourself regularly to the truth? See, my friend growing up was not exposed to the truth regularly. She was exposed always, constantly to lies about her father, about who she was and who she was becoming, etc. She wasn't exposed to the truth. Are you exposing yourself to the truth? Are you reminding yourself of what God says about himself through this, or are you just listening to whatever voice pops into your head based on the experiences of your day? Are you making judgments about who your dad is based on what life looks like? Or are you making judgments about him based on here? This is truth. This will deceive you. So get into the Word this summer. Whoever's teaching, I don't know if it's Arnold or somebody, whoever's teaching how to study the Bible, do it. It's the greatest year of my life in terms of training, where I met week after week after week after week with a man named Alan Foster, who walked me through how to study the Scriptures, principles I still use to this very day on how to study the Scriptures. And I've got a long way to go to learn better about how to study the Scriptures. Are you exposing yourself regularly and consistently to those who would rightly preach this word? I'm not the only one that can do that. I don't claim to be the best at it. I'm way down on a list of folks who are in giftedness of preaching the word. And I don't always do it right, but I do believe this. As a general rule of thumb, I try to teach you what this says. Get around those folks, men, women, who know how to rightly handle this and listen. Don't take everything they say as truth. Check it out. But listen. If this is not your home church, no problem. Get to another church that regularly teaches from here, week in and week out. Lastly, are you involved in a small group of people? I call them a band of brothers. Perimeter, the way we refer to it, is a discipleship group. It doesn't have to be a formal discipleship group, but do you have a small group of people that are spurring you on towards being involved in this? That are holding you accountable to read this, to memorize this, to meditate on this, to lean into this, to subject yourself to this, to alter your life to it rather than trying to alter it to your life? Are you with folks who love you enough to say, get after it? Here's why I say that. It's because I really believe that Daniel is an excellent example of one who had done much of the work that was necessary beforehand to be able to withstand the onslaught. Now, do not misunderstand me. He could not have withstood it had it not been for God fighting for him. But there's work that we are called to do before we get to the real serious challenges of him speaking this into our lives. National Geographic several years ago came out with an article. It was a great article. I'm one of those weird guys that likes to read things about animals. And for some reason, I've just been fascinated by it. In particular, kind of exotic animals that we don't really have a whole lot of abundance here in, where I grew up in Montgomery or in Atlanta. And so this article was so fascinating to me, talking about the Alaskan bull moose. The Alaskan bull moose has these huge horns. Okay, I mean, massive right here. And every fall during the mating season is when the males will battle one another for dominance. And so whoever, that come out on top, it's the males that get engaged in this battle. And how the battle is basically won is this. Whichever moose is bigger and stronger, and in particular has the bigger horns, whichever one has that, they will ram their heads into each other. It's like every boy's dream. This is how we fight. They ram their heads, and when the antlers get broken off, when the antlers are broken, that's a guarantee that whoever has the broken antler is going to be, or horns, is going to be the loser. Now, do you know when the battle is actually won, though? It's not in the fall in mating season. It's in the summer when they're eating. And whichever one of them eats the best diet, gets the most amount of weight, allows the horns to grow the biggest and the strongest, that's the one who is going to win. Do the work now, so that when this voice gets so loud, it is piercing sound, and it sounds so true. Do the work so that you know. But that's not what this says. That's not who he is. That's not who he tells me that I am. That's not what he tells me about how he is going to be there. Do the work out of season so that in season you can believe. Believe. Even when you beg and you don't hear, believe. He's coming. He may be taking his time, but he's coming. Let me pray.